I'm trying something new here by adding voiceover. I want to add some context to this video, and to the channel too. So this is my hamster. Her name is Nissa. It's a Scandinavian name that means friendly elf. And this is footage from the day I picked her up from a local rescue and put her in her new enclosure for the first time. She was brought to the rescue in October, I believe. She was in a critter trail cage with 9 other hamsters, plus 4 babies that she had just given birth to, like that day. Or maybe a couple days before, but they were like pink, new babies. I don't know what the situation was exactly and how she came to the rescue and where from. I do have pictures somewhere, and, of her cage when they first dropped it off, and some gory details I have and stuff like that, but that's for another video. I want to keep this happy moment we're watching happy. This is the first home Nissa's been in that actually fits in with ethical standards. You can't really see much of the cage yet, unless you've watched my time-lapse video where I show how I set it all up before I got her. I'll put that video in the description. She spent a really very long time in her carrier when I first put her in here. I think she was probably just comfortable in the bedding. And she had just come from like a 30-40 minute car ride, so obviously the critter trail didn't hit any criteria for proper care. It was plastic, it was too small. It had more than one hamster in it, many more than one. It had a tiny wheel. It was like absolutely disgusting. I could definitely go on about that. So after she was rescued, she was in temporary housing conditions, just meaning that, she was in a rescue situation, a temporary house. The basics were taken care of. She had a clean environment, fresh water, all of that, but it is still temporary housing. It's not very big. It's not really enriching, and for the most part, that all makes sense. The rescue acts as a temporary home for hopefully a very short period of time between when the animal is rescued from presumably worse conditions and when they're adopted and taken to their, forever home, as some might call it. All that is just to say, this is the first time Nissa has had enough space to run around in. She has a big wheel that doesn't cause her back to arch while she's running. She has natural food to forage for, sprinkled around her cage every night. She has different textures under her paws. She has a sand bath, so she can clean her fur and roll around just for fun. If you look at her old pictures, which I'll show another time, you'll see her fur is so greasy and just dirty. A big part of this was that she was just living in filth. I don't think the previous owners ever cleaned the cage. And by the time I met her, she had fluffed up again a lot, just from being in the rescue that I got her from. But she definitely loves her sand bath now, and there's always little sand flakes on her that catch the light and make it look like she's covered in glitter. Anyway, as far as I know, this is also her first moment alone, with no other hamsters fighting over territory or food. Also, no baby hamsters. So yeah, this is a big first for her. That's the bulk of the actual information I wanted to share about Nissa. I have an Instagram account for her, and I post pretty much every day. It's called Hamstergehege. It was my best German. I gave it my all right there. Hamstergehege, giving it my go again, means hamster cage in German. So if you want to see more of her, that's the place to go. I'll link to that in the description. The experience I've had with this pet Instagram has been kind of really strange. I honestly started it as a way to have kind of like a Finsta situation, which I've never had before. I follow a handful of Instagrams that center around pets, but honestly, the only reason I follow those is because of the people behind the accounts. I know them personally. Believe it or not, I'm actually not a huge animal person. I love my own pets, but I usually don't have a huge interest in other people's pets or anything. So when I started my own hamster account, I followed a few pet accounts of people I knew, And I also followed, like, some close friends and stuff. And then I ended up following a few, like, big hamster accounts that I know and love from Instagram and YouTube. A major thing I would look for were accounts run by adults. I love hamsters, I always have, but one thing that sucks about having them when you're an adult is that, in a way, you're, like, putting yourself in a category and into a hobby alongside young children. And that just, like, feels weird. And it is kind of weird. And that's what ended up happening with this Instagram account. So after I followed a couple main accounts, I came across even more accounts promoting proper hamster care. That's what we call it in the community. I'm sure you've heard that before. I feel oddly proper even saying proper, but I think most people, like, adhering to ethical hamster care guidelines are not from the US. That's just my guess. Europe definitely, and the UK as well, I think. They just have a higher standard of care for small animals, so it makes sense they refer to quality care as proper. Anyway, I ended up following more and more hamster accounts, and a lot of them started following me back. One of my first posts was of the finished cage setup, and a lot of people really liked it, and that's really cool. I think there's definitely an art to cage design. You tend to see it more with reptiles and reptile owners, and some people make a real hobby out of it. I scroll through snake and chameleon enclosures and DIY setups all the time, and they're, like, very elaborate. There's also a lot more adults in the reptile community, so it all, like, makes more sense. They have more money, more tools, all the stuff you need to build and decorate an enclosure. As I was saying, so this Finsta account quickly turned more into, like, a day in the life of Nissa backlog. And I'm glad it did, honestly. I wasn't sharing much juicy, like, personal info on there anyway, ever. I think a true Finsta is something that just might not, like, be for me. So now pretty much every day I take pictures of Nissa while I'm spending time with her at night before I go to bed. And I post them. And it's cool because I get to see a bunch of hamsters, and of course they're very cute, and I get to see a lot of enclosure setups that are way more complex than mine, and it inspires me to do better. So it's a very positive community, I think. And I think that's why a lot of people are drawn to animal accounts in general, because they're a space on social media where it's not all about us and the face, I guess, that we present online. There isn't that pressure to show, like, a highlight reel of our lives or anything. We can just focus on, like, cute little rodents or whatever, and it's, like, so fun. I get it now. I get pet accounts. So what I was getting to before, the other part of this, a lot of these hamster accounts are run by children. It's obviously not a negative thing, like, on their end. It's a group of kids that care a lot about their pets and their care standards, and it's really cool to see. But for me, it's just not something I realized I was getting into. Having over 100 people under the age of 18 follow me, it's just, like, not something that I thought I was doing when I started the account. I honestly didn't even start with any audience in mind in general, like, aside from, like, 4 of my friends that I followed, so. And I'm assuming most of the people watching right now might be young, too. So, you know, it's definitely not to knock you, and it isn't necessarily a negative thing at all. It's just something I've been very aware of lately. I'm pretty proud of my enclosure setups. I actually built this cage myself as well, and I wish I filmed more of that process. There's a lot of things I would do differently the second time, but I'm proud of my design process, and I'm definitely proud to promote ethical care of animals that aren't researched very well by most people, so. But I'm definitely scared of the pet YouTuber or, like, pet tuber community. Just, like, honestly saying those words kind of make my skin crawl. It's just, like, I think it's because most of the ones I've seen are marketed toward kids, and I'm not a kid, so I'm not super interested in those accounts and the way that they're structured. Again, like, nothing wrong with them, but when I watch them, it just feels like I'm sitting down in front of them at, like, circle time. And there's a whole lot that goes into the fact that hamsters are largely thought of as, like, for kids or, like, good beginner pets. It's definitely multi-layered. But there's nothing inherently about them or any animal that would make them, like, for children only, you know. has a lot to do with marketing. I think any of us who've gone into a local pet store, you know, in the US, like a or probably shouldn't say that, but you all know what I'm talking about. Every cage is bright and plastic and shaped like a race car or like a dinosaur or something. And they're so small too, and I think that really appeals to parents who want to satisfy their kids' want for a pet, but that don't want to give up a lot of space in the house. Like, oh man, I've seen some videos that people take walking into pet shops in Germany, and it's like just a whole different world. And really a whole different way of valuing these animals. It's like a whole thing. I could get into it, but I won't right now. Maybe that's a good future video idea though. So I guess I am adding an adult into the hamster community mix. That sounds so weird. That doesn't really sound right, so maybe I'm gonna take that back. But definitely not going to categorize myself or like box myself in as like a pet tuber. I'm definitely going to be exploring other topics in my YouTube videos that are TBD. The background music you've been hearing throughout this video was created by me. It's just a manufactured loop of a song that I put out on my first EP. So you can watch the music video for that here. Okay, bye.